read an op-ed piece in Detroit News by Robert Smith Jr. that had this statement in it: "Is there such an animal as a black conservative?" Robert Smith Jr. is giving y'all a clear example of Democrats disqualifying the personhood of people. What kind of animal is a black conservative?
Okay, so the question is, why am I a Republican? As a conservative Republican, I believe that war sucks. Oh, but there are things that suck way worse than war, y'all. Slavery, genocide, tyranny. Peace through strength, y'all. I'm a conservative Republican because I'm pro-life. I'm a conservative Republican because I believe that marriage should be between a man and a woman. As a conservative Republican, I support the Second Amendment. As a conservative Republican, I appreciate what America is. As a conservative Republican, I believe in a maximum of a 10% consumption tax. As a conservative Republican, I think if we're smart enough to earn the money, then we're smart enough to know how to spend it. I'm a conservative Republican because I believe that abstinence should be taught in school instead of having free condoms in the office. As a conservative Republican, I'm proud of my country. I'm proud that our country is seen as the place that if you want the best chance to realize your dream, it's the place to come to. Oh man, I don't think we're better than anybody else. It's America. We are everybody else. I could go on, y'all, but I'm just going to say that I'm a conservative Republican because I believe in God and I like it.
Hello and welcome to Common Sense TV. I'm your host, the Doctor of Common Sense. Why are black conservatives hated so much? That's a good question. Because it's obvious that the left, whether they be white left or black left, literally hate black conservative. The first words you hear is that they are nothing but Uncle Toms. They're nothing but sellouts. This is the thing that they say about the black conservative. Now, they don't say the same thing about these black Negroes selling out on the Democratic plantation, but if you say you're conservative, and Lord forbid you are really conservative, they will literally try to destroy you for no reason. Even if they say that you've done something wrong, you succeeding now, they still hate you. But they give people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and Sheila Jackson Lee and Maxine Waters chance after chance after chance after chance, proving who the true Uncle Tom or sellout is these dumb white liberals and these stupid black liberals. You notice how they hate men like Herman Cain. They hate men like Clarence Thomas. They hate men like Ben Carson and Allen West. They hate these men. Not because these men have done anything to them, it's because they have succeeded. And they succeeded by being on the conservative side and literally working hard and working their way up on their own. Notice some about white liberals and black liberals. Both are racist. They're racist as hell. But what they try to do is they say that if you succeed on your own and you're a conservative, that means you're Uncle Tom. But if you take a handout and get uplifted by somebody in the Democratic side, you are a champion. What has Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and Sheila Jackson Lee and Barack Obama really done to succeed on their own? But the Negroes love them. The white racists love them. These white so-called liberals who claim that they are fighting out there for the little black man literally hate these Negroes. They call people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and Barack Obama niggas all the time behind their back. I find that white liberals are some of the most racist people you ever want to meet. Because
You had Maxine Waters say that the Tea Party members should all go to hell. Well, I will tell you where hell is. Hell is in the black communities that the Congressional Black Caucus serves.
Hold on just a second. What did you just say?
I said these policies are racist.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joining us is the author of The Big Black Lie, How I Learned the Truth About the Democratic Party. Kevin Jackson, first of all, were you there on Saturday at the Capitol when Congressman Lewis and other members of the Congressional Black Caucus were spat upon? Were you there for that?
A lot of what they were saying had happened actually hadn't occurred. Been to many Tea Parties around the country, and I've yet to see any real violence towards anybody.
Far left's making a big deal out of the Tea Party movement being almost all white, implying it's a racist situation. Joining us now from St. Louis, Kevin Jackson.
I call it Emancipation 2. This time, everybody gets free.
With us now, reaction from Tea Party activist Kevin Jackson. Kevin, what'd you make of that?
Wow, I think he managed to sum up the Democrat and elitist position very succinctly by saying that black people are stupid and white people are racist. The thing that gets me most, Neil, is that the ease in which he makes these comments. Guess what? When blacks like myself, conservative blacks, go off the plantation, and what they do is they do what they did to Ken Gladney in St. Louis. They give you a beat down. And if they can't do it physically, they're going to do it verbally. Yeah, it's complete subterfuge. But the fact of the matter is, Carson made an incendiary comment that has no place in American politics and in the lexicon of today.
The Democratic operatives were destroying their own property so that somehow people would just, I don't know, just choose to blame them on Republicans. You really believe that?
Yeah, it's kind of like when there are riots in Watts and black people go and loot their own stores and you wonder why did it happen? It's the same reason. So when you can tell me with complete evidence that the people that are doing this are Republicans, and I'll be happy to answer your question. But until then, all you got is anecdotal evidence.
This is illogical.
The same way that you have anecdotal evidence around the Tea Party groups and saying that everybody's a racist, when I'm an example of a person who's been to these events, not one single racial incident can I point at.
There's a racist fringe to this, and that I wish Republican leaders and Tea Party
there's a racist fringe to the Democrat Party, because as I said, I've yet to see a black man lynched at a Tea Party. But I do know that the Democrat Party has lynched black people. So if you want to make that equivalency, then let's talk about that for a bit.
So when I heard a liberal commentator say that this movement was about ignorant rednecks bashing a black president, I had to make a stand as a black conservative. You have folks out there that are victimhood vendors like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. In our community, a lot of folks believe that America is against them. The gangster rappers, the whole 9 yards. And Michelle Obama was preying on that, saying in essence, this is the first time she's ever been proud of a country that's given her so much opportunity. We have 7 out of 10 black babies that are being born out of wedlock. We have rampant drug abuse in our neighborhoods. We have inner city schools that are failing us. I can go on and on and on, John.
The left puts people in boxes. The left says we're on women, we're on the black man. Politics? It's identity politics, and I refuse to be placed in their box. I've never been in their box.
And honestly, when I have had an open, passionate discussion about why I am a conservative, former liberal, now conservative, and I've explained, you know, why, it's because I care for my people, it's because I care for my community, it's because everything we've been doing for the last 50 years has made things worse for us, not better, and I want us to try something different.
I'd like to say that for me, I had been a Democrat most of my life, and I made the switch maybe about 10 years ago. It was not easy to become a Republican. I went Democrat, Independent, and eventually Republican. And I don't see how anyone that called themselves a Christian could actually belong to the Democratic Party.
Why do you say that?
Because it's the party of abortion. And if you look at the impact on African Americans, if Republicans were doing to blacks what Democrats are doing, it would be called genocide.
Wow.
I have been a member of the Republican Party for 10 years now, proud member. Had a road to Damascus conversion where I fell off the donkey and saw the light. And I have had the opportunity to speak with friends and family members about the conversion, and the conversation starts around the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and one person at a time discussing what our values were growing up in our households and in our churches.
All right, let me go to
We hear about switching to Republican. I want to tell people that you should first recognize you have a choice. You should at least know why you made that choice, have a reason and a basis for that choice. If you want to be a liberal, be liberal, but know why you're a conservative.
I'm a member of the Westchester Tea Party, and one of the founding principles of the Tea Party is the Constitution.
I called you Karen, I meant Leslie.
That's okay. One of the founding principles of the Tea Party is, relying on the Constitution, and I think that there tends to be a misconception about the Constitution Constitution, when we say we want to go back to the Constitution, people think racist, they think slavery. But that's not it. The Constitution explicitly says that we are all created equal. And so talking about going into schools and talking to young children, I think if we show them the Constitution and what it actually means and explain it to them, maybe that would draw them to it more and to realize that it's there to help us and to protect us, but not to give us things.
You know, just bouncing off that, I feel like that's the X factor for the black community. It's the church. It's the church. Yes. If you look at the conservative, principles, we have social, we have the government, we have, you got to get back to the church. The church is the one that fought for freedom, for free rights, for civil rights. It's the church that was the one pioneering this stuff. And so I feel like it goes back to us being people, being Christians, and black people, whether they heard it from their grandmother, from their mom, great-grand, they know something about church. They know something about God.
When you think about both hyphenation and it's not just the loss of the black community, but also of the youth, it's the fact that we've let the left take control of the school system. I was a teacher for 12 years, and I remember teachers from well-to-do areas talking about the kids who had a mother who was a drug addict and a father in prison. And they let these kids slide by and gave them all these special privileges. And I would tell them, look, you're not doing that child any favors. They need structure in their life beyond anything because of what they're going through at home.
What they need?
I see the media as generally an extension of the left. And the left really has no use for blacks who don't want to blame the problems on other people. If you're a black person who wants to use racism or the legacy of slavery as an all-purpose explanation for everything wrong in the black community, they will embrace you with open arms on the left. But if you say that incarceration rates and education skills and so forth and illegitimacy rates need to be solved by blacks themselves, the left has no use for you. In fact, they see you more as a threat.
And what I think is important is to be able to know and understand both sides and then make an educated decision, not just a blind loyalty, because when you just blindly follow, oftentimes you fall into a ditch and then you don't know why you're there, so you don't know how to get out.
That's well said.
I am more conservative than I am GOP. And that is the reason because I was brought up in the Tea Party. Now, what I think the difference between the Tea Party and GOP is people-orientated rather politics-orientated. I am a people person.
I'm one of the original Tea Party founders. When Breitbart was excoriated over Shirley Sherrod, we went out there. All of us formed the National Tea Party Federation, and we never talked about color. We talked about education. We talked about the things Sonny talks about. Giving you skin in the game is giving you knowledge. Knowledge is power. Why is it that 57 years, about 20,997 days, is to be a laudable achievement for John Dingell in Detroit, where the inner city has fallen apart, where they've lost over 25% of their population, where they've spent over a decade at the #1 spot on the poverty rate list. We are not teaching Americans, black or otherwise, what their skin in the game is, what the value proposition is in life. The value proposition is choice, it's opportunity, it's reward, it's possibly failure. And we've got to impart this to our kids.
All of us agree that the welfare policies are what bankrupt our community. When you look in the 60s, 70% of our children were raised in marital households. Today it's 70% raised in single households. This is direct public policy. So when you look at issues like immigration and what they're talking about in reform, public policy has Davis Bacon on the books. Public policy has minimum wage laws on the books. That's just why this will collapse our community.
Hello. My name is Elbert Lee Guillory, and I'm the senator for the 24th District right here in beautiful Louisiana. Recently, I made what many are referring to as a bold decision to switch my party affiliation to the Republican Party. I wanted to take a moment to explain why I chose to become a Republican, and also to explain why I don't think it was a bold decision at all. It is the right decision, not only for me, but for all my brothers and sisters in the black community. You see, in recent history, the Democrat Party has created the illusion that their agenda and their policies are what's best for black people. Somehow it's been forgotten that the Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an abolitionist movement with one simple creed, that slavery is a violation of the rights of man. Frederick Douglass called Republicans the party of freedom and progress, and the first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln. the author of the Emancipation Proclamation. It was Republicans in Congress who authored the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, giving former slaves citizenship, voting rights, and due process of law. The Democrats, on the other hand, were the party of Jim Crow. It was Democrats who defended the rights of slave owners. It was the Republican President Dwight Eisenhower who championed the Civil Rights Act of 1957. But it was the Democrats in the Senate who filibustered the bill. You see, at the heart of liberalism is the idea that only a great and powerful big government can be the benefactor of social justice for all Americans. But the left is only concerned with one thing: control. And they disguise this control as charity. Programs such as welfare, food stamps, these programs aren't designed to lift Black Americans out of poverty. They were always intended as a mechanism for politicians to control the Black community. The idea that Blacks, or anyone for that matter, need the government to get ahead in life is despicable. And even more important, this idea is a failure. Our communities are just as poor as they have always been. Our schools continue to fail children. Our prisons are filled with young Black men who should be at home, being fathers. Our self-initiative and our self-reliance have been sacrificed in exchange for allegiance to our overseers, who control us by making us dependent on them. Sometimes I wonder if the word freedom is tossed around so frequently in our society that it has become a cliche. The idea of freedom is complex and it's all-encompassing. It's the idea that the economy must remain free of government persuasion. It's the idea that the press must operate without government intrusion. And it's the idea that the emails and phone records of Americans should remain free from government search and seizure. It's the idea that parents must be the decision makers in regards to their children's education, not some government bureaucrat. But most importantly, it is the idea that the individual must be free to pursue his or her own happiness, free from government dependence and free from government control. Because to be truly free is to be reliant on no one other than the author of our destiny. These are the ideas at the core of the Republican Party, and it is why I am a Republican. So my brothers and sisters of the American community, please join with me today in abandoning the government plantation and the party of disappointment, so that we may all echo the words of one Republican leader who famously said, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
Well, I think that the problem is nobody's defined what being conservative means.
Go ahead.
I think that is our problem. Conservatives means we have smaller government and more liberty. And yet, if you ask what have we done, I think we've lost our way completely. Our rhetoric is still pretty good, but when we get in charge, we expand the government. You talk about Dodd-Frank, but we gave him Sarbanes-Oxley. We gave debts as well, you know, when we're in charge. So if it means limited government, you have to ask a basic question: what should the role of government be? The founders asked that question, had a revolution, wrote a constitution. And they said the role of government ought to be to protect liberty. It's not to run a welfare state and not to be the policeman of the world. And so if you're going to conservative, how can you be conservative and cut food stamps, but you won't cut spending overseas? There's not a nickel or penny that anybody will cut on the conservative side overseas spending, and we don't have the money. They're willing to start more wars. So I say if you're conservative, you want small government across the board, especially in personal liberty. What's wrong with having the government out of our personal lives? So this is what we have to decide: what conservative means, what limited government means. Now I have a simple suggestion. We have a pretty good guide, and if we follow the Constitution, government would be very small, and we would all be devoted conservatives.
Hey!